bacterial cell structure or anatomy. Okay, and it's extremely important, even from the point of view of clinical vignettes, because in a lot of clinical vignettes on infectious diseases, you will encounter terms like pili, fimbriae, flagella, capsule. So all these are, ABCs, or the basic foundations of, bacterial structures, which are going to help you a lot in solving clinical vignettes on infectious diseases. So this is a very, very important topic. And we are going to understand bacterial cell structure or anatomy as differences between two very important categories of bacteria based on Gram stain, that is Gram positive organisms and Gram negative organisms. Okay, so we are going to draw two boxes like this, G plus, G minus. So the left one is Gram positive bacterium, the right one is Gram negative bacterium. We are going to dissect the structure of bacteria from inside to outside, alright, and initially we are going to see what is common between Gram positive and Gram negative, and then we will see the differences. So as I said, we are going to go from inside to outside. So the innermost thing is nothing in the cell is nothing but the cytoplasm, and the cytoplasm is surrounded by what? This is the cytoplasm is surrounded by the layer of cell membrane, also known as plasma membrane, also known as inner membrane. So this is the innermost layer surrounding the cytoplasm. So guys, now few important points about cell membrane. Remember, it is 5 to 10 nanometers thick. It has got respiratory enzymes, all right, and it has got the property of being semi-permeable, in other words, selectively permeable. Okay, now what is meant by these terms, semi-permeable or selectively permeable? Now what you can see over here, you can see this is a guard or a policeman. Okay, this is a guard. Okay, another analogy which we can take over here is that of a policeman. Okay, so the job of a guard or a policeman is to prevent the entry of intruders. Okay, and what you can see over here, this is nothing but cell membrane. Now remember, cell membrane is nothing but a phospholipid bilayer with the lipid part inside and the phosphate part outside. Alright, now why it is called as selectively permeable or semi-permeable? The reason is, just like a sincere guard or a watchman or a policeman allows the entry of only those people who have got the valid ID proof or who are authorized to enter a building or a designated area, they are not going to permit just anyone and everyone to pass through. Similarly, a cell membrane also has got a very very important job to do, that is to allow the entry of only selected molecules in terms of solutes or amino acids or nutrients, etc., to enter the cell, and not anything and everything. Okay, so who is this? So this fellow is talking to the cell membrane. Hi, I am a nutrient, can I come in? The cell membrane obviously will be welcoming to the entry of this organism, of this nutrient. So the cell membrane will respond, yes, come in, of course. Then we have got another agent, as you can see in purple. Hi, I am an antibiotic, can I come in please? Don't you dare come in. Okay, so it's not that no antibiotics can penetrate through the cell membrane. This is just an example over here I have taken to emphasize upon the fact that not everything and anything can cross the cell membrane and gain access inside the cell. So that is what is meant by semi-permeable or selectively permeable, and it is nothing but as I have mentioned, it's a phospholipid bilayer. Okay, so cell membrane is present in all living cells, and bacterial cells are not exceptions. Alright, so now let me come back to these two green squares and let me modify the diagram a little bit. Now what modification I'm gonna do? Now what have I done, guys? I have drawn some invaginations of the cell membrane. So what are these? These are invaginations of cell membrane, and these invaginations are referred to as mesosomes or chondroids. Okay. Now guys, there's a reason why I have shown these vaginations as a little longer in G plus bacterium, whereas not so long in G minus, because I want all of you to remember that mesosomes are more prominent in gram positive bacteria. Remember, P for prominent and P for positive. Okay. So these are more prominent in gram positive bacteria. Now, since these are nothing but invaginations of cell membrane, and cell membrane, as I mentioned, has got respiratory enzymes. So what are the functions of mesosomes? One of course is respiration, and the other one is cell division. There's a famous MCQ asked about mesosomes, not a new MCQ, very old MCQ rather. Are these essential for life of a bacterium or not? Absolutely yes, guys. Mesosomes, being nothing but invaginations of the cell membrane, are absolutely essential for life of a bacterium. So they are essential for life of a bacterium. Alright. So this is about the cell membrane and its invagination, that is mesosomes or chondroids. Let me give a little more attention to G minus bacteria. Okay, so this is a G minus bacterium. Alright. Now, the innermost layer surrounding the cytoplasm is nothing but the cell membrane or the plasma membrane, also known as the inner membrane. Okay. So, if there is something known as inner membrane, there should be something called as outer membrane also. And yes, it does exist. The outer membrane is a structure which is present in gram negative organisms, the gram negative bacteria, which I have drawn over here as in pink color. So this is nothing but the outer membrane, and this green one of course is the inner or the cell membrane or the plasma membrane. Few words about the outer membrane. The outer membrane also is a phospholipid bilayer, just like the inner membrane, but it is a little different from the inner membrane. In what sense? It has some additional structures called as porins, which are a kind of proteins. Remember, P for porins, P for proteins, and a very important structure called as endotoxin, which we will discuss in detail in a few minutes. Okay. So remember, this again is a common question. Porins are present in which kind of bacteria, gram positive or gram negative? Answer is gram negative, because where are porins located? In the outer membrane. Is outer membrane present in gram positive? No. Outer membrane is part and parcel of the property of gram negative organisms. Okay. So it's a phospholipid bilayer, and it has got these additional structures called as porins and endotoxin. And this space between the two membranes, the inner and the outer membrane, this space is known as the periplasmic space. Okay, periplasmic space. And this periplasmic space, because it is a space, so it is going to lodge something in it. What is that something? This spiral thing which I am drawing over here, it is nothing but very thin peptidoglycan. So this spiral thing is, this is very thin peptidoglycan. Peptidoglycan, guys, I have mentioned before as the name of the cell wall constituent of bacterial cell wall. Okay, so this is peptidoglycan, very thin layer is there in the periplasmic space. And what else is located in this periplasmic space? These golden circles which I am drawing, what are these? These are nothing but beta lactamases. Beta lactamases. In pharmacology, you are going to read about different kinds or categories of antimicrobial agents. One of them are beta lactams, and there are certain bacteria which produce beta lactamases, meaning these are the enzymes which will break down the antibiotics called as beta lactams. So these organisms, when they infect an individual and that individual is taking beta lactams, the patient won't respond to these beta lactams by virtue of the beta lactamases being produced by these bacteria. Okay, so remember, in gram negative organisms, beta lactamases are located in the periplasmic space. Okay, but also remember that beta lactamases are not present in all gram negative organisms. Okay, only in some of them. Okay, so this is about something, the extra edge about the gram negative structure. Now let us come back to gram positive structure. Let us see where its peptidoglycan is located. Now, gram positive bacteria do not have the outer membrane, and they have got what? And they have got very, very thick layer of peptidoglycan. Okay, so this is very thick peptidoglycan. And even some gram positive organisms can produce beta lactamase, but since periplasmic space is not there in gram positive organisms, these beta lactamases are, they are produced and thrown out into the surroundings of the gram positive bacteria. Okay, so these golden molecules are nothing but beta lactamases which are actively thrown out or secreted in the local area around the gram positive bacteria. So these are nothing but beta lactamases which are secreted out. Now there is a term called as cell envelope. Now it refers to what? It refers to all the layers surrounding the bacterial cytoplasm. Okay, right from the inner membrane or the cell membrane to peptidoglycan, whether it is thin in G minus or it is very thick in G plus, and also the outer membrane which is there in G minus and absent in G plus. Okay, so cell envelope is whatever layers are present around the cytoplasm in a bacterial cell. Okay, so we have seen the basic structure of G plus and G minus. So cell envelope, as we have seen, is thicker in G plus bacteria. As I have mentioned, there is a very thick layer of peptidoglycan in G plus bacteria, whereas if somebody asks you cell envelope is more complicated in which kind of bacteria, G plus or G minus, your answer is going to be G minus, because as you can see, the G minus bacteria have got the inner membrane, then the periplasmic space lodging the beta lactamases and the thin PG, that is peptidoglycan layer, and the outer membrane also is present, which in turn has got additional structures called as porins and endotoxin. So cell envelope is more complicated in structure, is more complicated in G minus bacteria, thicker in G plus, more complicated in G minus bacteria. And if I ask you which kind of bacterial infections are tougher or more difficult to treat, G plus or G minus, which kind of bacterial infections are more difficult to treat? At the outset you might think that because the cell envelope is thicker in G plus, they should be more these infections should be more difficult to treat, but it's not like that. The correct answer to this question is what? The correct answer is G minus bacteria. You know why, guys? Because G minus bacteria have got two lipid bilayers in the form of the cell membrane and the outer membrane, both of which are phospholipid bilayers, and I have explained in detail how the sincere guard or policeman or watchman works to prevent the entry of unwanted unwanted people inside a building or an area. Okay, and very similarly these phospholipid bilayer membranes also act. Okay, so gram negative bacterial infections are tougher to treat because the lipid bilayers which are 2 in number in gram-negative organisms, these lipid bilayers act as barriers to the entry of molecules including antibiotics. That is why, as a general rule, we say that gram-negative bacterial infections are more difficult or tougher to treat as compared to gram-positive infections. Alright. So, next we have, now let us dissect gram-negative bacterial cells a little more and focus on the outer membrane. Okay. So, the green box is nothing but it represents the cell membrane, and the outer pink box represents the outer membrane. So, in the outer membrane, as I have already mentioned, we have got what? It's a phospholipid bilayer. It has got proteins called as porins and LPS, that is endotoxin. Okay. So, I have previously used the term endotoxin in the diagram, and now I am going to introduce a synonym word for endotoxin, that is LPS or lipopolysaccharide. Okay. So, this whole thing is referred to as endotoxin or lipopolysaccharide or LPS. Okay. So, as the name LPS implies, it's made up of lipid part and the polysaccharide part. So, this part which is embedded in the outer membrane, this is the lipid part, and this very part which is protruding or projecting out of the cell, which I have drawn in golden color, this is nothing but the polysaccharide part. Okay, polysaccharide part. Okay. Now, structurally, LPS has got lipid and polysaccharide, and why it is called as endotoxin? Because this causes what is known as endotoxic shock, also referred to as gram-negative shock. Now guys, before I explain what exactly this means, we need to know the structure of LPS or endotoxin. So this is the structure of endotoxin or lipopolysaccharide, LPS. Okay. Now as you can see, it has got three important parts: the lipid part and the core polysaccharide and the outer polysaccharide. So as far as the lipid part is concerned, the lipid part has got what is known as lipid A. Okay, lipid A. Now remember, lipid A has got capital A in its name. So remember, it is the A1 or the number 1 toxic moiety. I just mentioned that LPS is responsible for a very fatal deadly disease, that is endotoxic shock or gram-negative shock. And question is often asked, what exact part of LPS is responsible for the endotoxic shock? The answer is lipid A. So it is the A1 toxic moiety or the villain which is responsible for the disease gram-negative shock or endotoxic shock. Okay. So as we see over here, the lipid A part has got disaccharide diphosphate part to it. You can see these two phosphate molecules. Okay. And these are this whole thing represents the disaccharide, and you can see certain fatty acids dangling like this. Okay. Now a very important example of a fatty acid which is part of the lipid A is, remember, beta hydroxy myristic acid. You will never ever come across this term anywhere else except for here, that is LPS. Okay. Now, so this is number 1. The second part, as I said, is the core polysaccharide, and the third part is the outer polysaccharide. Okay. This is the outer polysaccharide. It is also, the outer polysaccharide is also referred to as the somatic antigen or the O antigen. Remember guys, it is not zero antigen, it is the O antigen. Okay, outer polysaccharide. O actually stands for outer. Okay, now the core polysaccharide is made up of 3 to 5 sugars, and the outer polysaccharide is made up of 25 repeating units of 3 to 5 sugars. Okay, now imagine if we talk about the outer polysaccharide, the 3 sugars, if I represent in 3 different colors, one is pink, then we have got green sugar, and we have got golden sugar. Okay, so this is 1 unit. Say this is 1 unit made up of 3 sugars, and there could be 20 up to 25 repeating such units. Okay, in the outer polysaccharide, for instance, the unit pink, green and golden is repeated like this. Okay, so this is 1 unit, this is 2nd unit, so it is a polysaccharide. This is the outer polysaccharide. Okay, whereas the core polysaccharide is made up of limited number of sugars. Okay, and the outer polysaccharide, outer PS, that is outer polysaccharide, it varies a lot. It varies a lot amongst different bacteria, and therefore it is used for what is known as serotyping. This is extremely important. Okay, now what do we understand by serotyping? I'll just give you a simple example. Now guys, remember, in microbiology, typing means classification. Okay, who are we classifying? What are we classifying? We are classifying microorganisms. All right, and as we all know, the bacteria have got a lot of important structures, like different kinds of proteins, sugars and all. Okay, and one such example of an important structure is the outer polysaccharide. Okay, and I have mentioned that it is going to be variable in different bacteria. So if we study the outer polysaccharide in different bacteria, then we can classify bacteria accordingly. Okay, so sero means what over here? Sero means actually surface. So serotyping means typing or classifying bacteria based on certain surface structures. One such example of a surface structure is nothing but the outer polysaccharide. All right, we are going to see in bacteriology a lot of examples of serotyping. Basically, serotyping is done to classify a bacterium below the level of the species. For example, the best example which we can quote over here is, let's say, if we are talking about outer polysaccharide, which is there only in gram negative organisms, we have got Salmonella typhi, okay, which has got more than 200 serotypes, okay, based on the O antigen or the outer polysaccharide. All right, what does this mean? The name of the genus is Salmonella, the species name is typhi, but if suppose there are 200 different Salmonella typhi organisms, then each one of them is going to have a unique type of O antigen or the outer polysaccharide. Okay, so we can designate these 200 different types of O antigens as O12, O200. Okay, so that is why that is what I was referring to, classifying an organism below the level of the species. So the common thing between the 200 bacteria whom we are calling S. typhi is, the common thing is all of them belong to the genus Salmonella and all of them belong to the species typhi. But still all those 200 organisms are different from each other because each one of them has got its own unique variety or type of the O antigen. So what we have done, we have classified S. typhi into different serotypes based on the surface antigen called as O antigen. Okay, so this is just one example of serotyping, using keeping what in consideration, the structure of the O antigen. Okay, so remember, this is really important, the somatic antigen or the O antigen. All right, and the lipid A part is the toxic part. Now, what is meant by gram-negative shock or endotoxic shock? It's a highly fatal disease which is caused by lipopolysaccharide or endotoxin. Now, LPS is called as endotoxin because it's a toxic or toxic substance, toxic to humans, and it is embedded, it is present inside the structure of the gram negative organisms, specifically where it is located in the outer membrane. Okay, and the lipid A part, which is responsible for the toxic shock, is similar in structure in all G minus bacteria. Okay, so the lipid A part, which is the toxic moiety or the toxic part, is similar in structure in all the gram negative bacteria. That is why we use a blanket term called as endotoxic shock or the gram negative shock. You will never ever hear of terms like Klebsiella gram negative shock or Escherichia coli gram negative shock. Klebsiella and Escherichia coli both are gram negative organisms, okay, but we don't use their specific names to represent the endotoxic shock caused by a specific gram negative organism, because the villain or the culprit is lipid A, which is similar in structure in all gram negative organisms. Okay, so do remember lipid A is the toxic part. Okay, now I'll draw a schematic diagram. Lipid A is the villain, so let me use the red or the color of danger. This is the lipid A. Okay, now there is a bridge which attaches the lipid A to the, this suppose is the core polysaccharide, and then we have got the longest one, this is the outer polysaccharide, outer PS. Now this bridge which is connecting the lipid A with the core polysaccharide, this bridge is referred to as ketodeoxy octulunic acid, that is KDO. KDO, that is ketodeoxy octulunic acid. Okay, this again is unique to only LPS. Now guys, as I mentioned that LPS is or endotoxin is present in the outer membrane of gram negative organisms. Now there's an exception to this important fact. What is that exception? There's one gram positive organism which, despite being gram positive, has got endotoxin in its structure. And what is its name? Remember, we already have discussed gram stain, and gram positive organisms appear positively blue on gram stain. So I'm going to write the name of that special bacterium in blue color because it's gram positive. That special bacterium is Listeria monocytogenes. Okay, this is the only G plus bacterium having endotoxin in its structure. Okay, endotoxin is an integral part of the structure of gram negative bacteria, so it is expected to be released out of the bacterial body only when the bacteria die, only when they die and they undergo lysis. Okay, so endotoxin, remember, is released on the death of gram negative bacteria, except one important gram negative organism which produces endotoxin even while it is alive, and that is responsible for the fatality or the seriousness of the disease caused by these gram negative organisms. So who are those special fellows? Because they are gram negative, let me use the red color for these organisms. Neisseria. Now Neisseria are what? These are gram negative diplococci. Diplococci meaning these cocci are arranged in pairs or groups of two. Okay, so Neisseria are gram negative diplococci which release endotoxin even while they are alive, that is during life. Okay, so this is one exception, and there is one more exception pertaining to Neisseria. In case of Neisseria, the endotoxin is called as not lipopolysaccharide but lipo-oligosaccharide. lipo-oligosaccharide, that is LOS, because the outer polysaccharide actually has got less number of sugars, so it is not very long. So that is why it is referred to as LOS, that is lipo-oligosaccharide. Now let us see how exactly the endotoxin or the lipopolysaccharide causes endotoxic shock and what are the features of this particular disease. Now guys, endotoxin, especially the lipid A, as I mentioned, remember lipid A should remind you of the fact that it is the A1 or the number one toxic moiety as far as endotoxin is concerned. Okay, so it is the lipid A which is going to cause all the problems to the patients. So remember, the lipid A part of the endotoxin is going to activate macrophages, complement and tissue factor. So remember it as M, C and T. Okay. Now, what will happen as a result of activation of macrophages? There will be production of important molecules like interleukin 1, TNF, that is tumor necrosis factor, and nitric oxide. Now remember these as I, T and N. Remember I, T, N. Remember the I-10 car. I for interleukin 1, which is going to be responsible for fever. Okay. TNF is tumor necrosis factor. It is going to be responsible for fever and hypotension, and nitric oxide is going to cause hypotension. Okay. So remember, in the middle we have got the tumor necrosis factor, which is going to produce two effects. Okay, fever and hypotension. And on either side of T, we have got I and N. Interleukin 1, I stands for interleukin 1, which is going to cause fever, and N stands for nitric oxide, which is going to cause hypotension, and both are going to be caused by TNF, tumor necrosis factor, in the middle. And then we have got complement. It will also activate complement. Complement is basically a group of proteins belonging to the innate immune system, which comes to our rescue when certain infection happens. Okay, more details about all these facts, the complement system, macrophages, interleukin 1, how exactly it is produced, how what exact role it plays in the immune response, all that we are going to discuss in immunology. Okay, for now just remember the schematic representation. The activation of complement as a result of action of endotoxin is going to lead to the production of two important complement proteins called as C3A and C5A. Okay, now C3A, guys, is responsible for recruitment of neutrophils. Okay, wherever C5A concentration is going to be more in the tissues, neutrophils will literally smell that heightened concentration of C5A and they will be attracted towards that area of increased C5A. So that is referred to as neutrophil chemotaxis. Okay, and C3A is another complement protein produced as a result of complement activation. It is going to cause hypotension and edema in the patient. Okay, and then lastly we have got T stands for tissue factor. The lipid A part of endotoxin is also going to activate tissue factor, which in turn will activate the coagulation cascade, and the patient will land up in DIC, that is disseminated intravascular coagulation. DIC stands for disseminated intravascular coagulation. This is a very important entity which will be taught to you very nicely and in detail in pathology. Okay, so remember DIC. So this is how the endotoxin is going to trouble the patient. Now, the other thing about endotoxin or LPS which I want all of you to remember is, now remember, when we talk about LPS or endotoxin, we have got L and the PS part. The lipid part is toxic, but it is non-immunogenic. In other words, it is non-antigenic. Now, what is meant by being non-immunogenic or non-antigenic? Remember, genic means to produce. Immunogenic means generation or production of immune response. Antigenic and immunogenic are synonymous terms. Our immune system will be, get up and do some work in, in the form of production of antibodies or activation of some immunologically competent cells whenever there is invasion in the body, whenever some foreign substance or foreign organism invades the body. Okay, so LPS we are saying is the toxic part. Obviously we would want our immune system to step up and help us by producing some antibodies or some other immunologically active structure against it. But sadly the lipid part non immunogenic or non antigenic, which is a bad news for us, because against the lipid part, the we won't be able to produce antibodies. On the other hand, if we talk about the polysaccharide part, okay, over here we are referring to what? We are referring to the outer polysaccharide. Okay, this is the, remember, outer polysaccharide. L is the lipid part, and the outer polysaccharide, if we talk about the outer polysaccharide, is non-toxic, unlike LPS, meaning it is not going to be responsible for disease, but it is immunogenic or antigenic. Immunogenic or antigenic. Okay. Now, but these antibodies which are going to be produced against the outer polysaccharide are not going to be of any help to us as far as protection against the endotoxic shock is concerned. But because the outer polysaccharide is antigenic or immunogenic, so the immune system is going to produce antibodies against the outer polysaccharide. Analysis of these antibodies in the serum of the patient will help us find out what exact serotype has infected the patient. Okay, so because of the property of being immunogenic or antigenic, the outer polysaccharide therefore is used for epidemiological purpose. Epidemiological purpose or studies, meaning in an area we can find out how many people residing in a particular area are infected with say a particular serotype of a particular kind of microorganism. Okay, so that is the significance of knowing the fact that outer polysaccharide is immunogenic or antigenic.